Hello and welcome to Sonic Lore, History of Mobius. In my previous retelling of the Archie Sonic story, I told the story of how Knuckles became the current guardian of the floating island. This time, I'll be telling the story of how the Chaotix came to live on the floating island. One day, while Knuckles was patrolling around the island, he happened to walk through some tall grass and accidentally tripped on Vector, who was sleeping in it. Vector angrily yelled at Knuckles and attempted to intimidate him. Knuckles asked him if he knew who he was, but Vector was dismissive of him. Knuckles told Vector who he was and tried to assert his authority as guardian of the island. Vector questioned Knuckles and used the opportunity to knock him down with a sneak attack. Vector taunted Knuckles, but Knuckles recovered and punched Vector's snout. Vector complained about his injury, and in response, Knuckles offered to end the fight. While helping him up, Knuckles asked Vector how he got to the floating island. He stated that Vector was the first person he's encountered since returning to the island with his father. Vector was confused by Knuckles' statement and pointed out that there were others on the island. He told Knuckles that everyone used a plane to escape from below when Robotnik attacked. Suddenly, a bird named Cat's Weasel appeared and pooped on Vector's head. After that, Knuckles and Vector became friends. The next person to live on the floating island was Mighty. His story began just after he broke out of Robotnik's prison camp with the help of Sonic. After Sonic and Mighty freed Robotnik's prisoners, Sonic left to rejoin his friends and Mighty was left alone. As Mighty thought about the recent loss of his friends and family, he suddenly heard a noise coming from the bushes. He worried that Robotnik's guards had tracked him down, but when he looked through the bushes, it turned out to be Knuckles. Knuckles asked Mighty if he lived in the area and said he was looking for information. Mighty told him he didn't live anywhere near the area. He then told Knuckles about his recent escape from prison. Knuckles was ignorant about what prison was and asked Mighty about it. Mighty was shocked that Knuckles was unaware of what prison was, but he tried explaining it to him. Knuckles became more confused about Mighty's explanation, so Mighty asked him where he came from. Knuckles answered his question by showing him the floating island, which was floating nearby. Mighty was stunned by the sight of the island, but Knuckles regained his attention. He told Mighty that he needed to know if there were any crocs in the area. Mighty was unaware of what a croc looked like, so Knuckles gave a vague description of Vector to him. Mighty was amazed that something like that existed and asked Knuckles where he could find some crocs. Knuckles said he was disappointed that Mighty didn't know about Vector's location, but Mighty told him that he had a lot on his mind. Knuckles then asked Mighty if he had anyone around, but Mighty said that everyone was gone. Knuckles tried to be empathetic towards Mighty by telling him about the loss of his father, but it caused an awkward silence between them. Knuckles broke the silence by offering Mighty to hang out with him. Mighty asked Knuckles if he was staying, but Knuckles said that he had to get back home. Mighty was curious about how Knuckles would get back to the island, and that's when Knuckles revealed Vector in his gyrocopter. Vector flew all of them back to the floating island, but he crashed his vehicle in the process. At some point, in the Golden Hive colony, Charmy's family woke him up to celebrate his acknowledgement ceremony. Once Charmy's father placed a crown on his head, he looked at himself in the mirror. He suddenly screamed no and threw the crown away. His family was shocked by his outburst, but Charmy cried out that he didn't want to be a prince. While running from his family, he accidentally bumped into his butler. His butler asked him if he was alright, but Charmy ran away from him too. Charmy eventually ran into his fiancée, Saffron. She tried to talk to him, but Charmy avoided her. While flying away from his home, he bumped into his friend Mello. Charmy told him about his acknowledgement ceremony and how he felt that no one cared about what he wanted. Mello told Charmy that he understood his issue and told him about his problem with his dad. After listening to his friend, Charmy said to Mello that he needed to fly solo. Mello asked him where he was going, and Charmy told him that he was going to the floating island. He made Mello promise not to tell anyone where he was going, and Mello promised that he wouldn't. When Charmy arrived on the island, He shrunk himself and ran into Mighty, who was sitting next to a waterfall by himself. At first, Mighty couldn't see Charmy, but that quickly changed when Charmy flew in front of him. Mighty introduced himself, and the two became friends. The last person to move to the floating island was Espio. Espio came to live on the floating island thanks to a fellow chameleon named Valadez. And that's it. I know Espio's story is short, but there is a very good reason for that. For now, I hope you all enjoyed this, and I hope you'll stick with me for more. Thank you.